Welcome to this second part of this new chapter, which is entitled Morphology. You remember that the last point we mentioned was the fact that uh, morphemes cannot be attached blindly to any root, which means the moment you learn a morpheme and a root, you should know which morpheme goes with which root. This is what we said in here. Redo is acceptable, rewrite is acceptable, but redig and re-it are not acceptable here. Now the same thing applies to some other let's say derivational morphemes like ness. Here ness is added to the adjective smart to give a noun smartness, white, whiteness. But with strong we don't add ness here, we add something else, th here, strength here. Look, strongness is something ungrammatical and unacceptable here. So wide, wideness, that does not exist, but instead we have width. Warm, it's not warmness but warmth. Look, here we have got swift and rapid. These are supposed to be synonyms, okay? But one takes ness and the other one takes ity here. So which means that we should know exactly what derivation morpheme goes with what root here. It's not something to be explained in a scientific logical way, but these are things that we just learn, when we were babies. These are pieces of information that we should store in our mind about morphemes in general, about roots and about let's say derivation morphemes. Same thing in here. This adjective rank, the noun out of it is not rankity but rankness here. So same obscure here, it's not obscureness as a noun but obscurity. Okay, resign as a noun, resignation, not resignity here. But look, divine, it's not divineness but divinity here. So what does this necessitate? What can we get from all these examples as lesson here? How to pronounce and combine morphemes must be learned by the language user and stored in the mind as unique information about the morpheme. So we need to store many pieces of information about morphemes. Of course, the meanings of these morphemes must also be learned and stored here. So we are supposed to store the meanings in our mind as pieces of information, the meanings of morphemes, with what other roots or other morphemes they go, and even their pronunciation. So these are things that we should learn about morphemes. Okay? Now, these things that we are supposed to store in our mind as information about the morphemes here, they represent what you call a lexical entry. So, in other words, linguists refer to all the information stored for a particular morpheme as a lexical entry. Now, the whole set of lexical entries for a language is called its lexicon. This is what you call the mental lexicon. It's like a dictionary where we put the words in an alphabetical order, and each word is being explained from the grammatical point of view, from the pronunciation point of view, from the collocation point of view, and everything there. Okay, so each lexical entry includes an underlying representation. The underlying representation, or what we call the underlying form or the base form. Now the underlying representation contains information about the pronunciation of the morpheme or word. Not all of the information about how to pronounce a given morpheme or word must be stored in the lexicon. Why? Because some aspects of pronunciation are determined by processes which apply to many morphemes of the language. much about the pronunciation of each morpheme is therefore describable by phonological rules. You know what can be described in terms of phonological rule? It is predictable. So there is no need to learn it. We need just to learn or to remember the rule. Okay, so we do not need to learn by heart each morpheme and each piece of information about the morpheme, because some pieces of information are describable by phonological rules, and we're going to explain this through concrete examples. Now, only the part of the pronunciation not describable by rules need be stored in the lexicon as part of a lexical entry. So what are we supposed to store in our mind as piece of information about the morpheme as far as its pronunciation is concerned? It's only that part which cannot be predicted by a rule. Okay, so the thing that cannot be predicted by a rule should be learned, should be stored in the mind, because it's something which is unique. Now, the description of how a morpheme is actually pronounced in a given word is called a surface representation. What you produce as a word in speech, what you show is the surface representation, and behind that surface representation there is what you call an underlying representation. Now this underlying representation undergoes the rules. Okay, in other words, the phonological rules act on the underlying representation of a morpheme or word to determine the shape of its surface representation. Let's explain this through this concrete example. We have got assume. The verb to assume is the underlying representation. Now, when we derive from it the noun, when we add to it tion, it becomes assumption. Look, there is a p which is added here in the surface representation, because we have derived the noun from the verb here. Now it seems here we have got a rule that can help us understand what is going on there. Why do we add p there? We have got a rule. The rule says insert a p, this sound, between a stem, the stem here is to assume, between a stem ending in m and a suffix beginning with voiceless consonant. So let's go back to what we said before here. So look here, this is the stem, the base, this is what you call the underlying form, to assume. The last sound of it is m. We are going to add to it shen, this tion, shen. So the first sound of this tion is sh, which is voiceless. So between m, the last sound of the stem, and sh, the beginning of the suffix, we have to add this p here. This is what we have said in here. Insert a p between a stem ending m and a suffix beginning with voiceless consonant. This rule is responsible for the p's in assumption. Look, where is the underlying form here? Is to assume. As a noun it becomes assumption. Here, consume. As a noun it becomes consumptive. Resume, resumption. Redeem, redemption. So it seems it's a general rule here. Okay, it can help us understand why this surface structure here, or surface representation if you like, takes this p as in assumption, p in redemption, p in resumption, p in consumptive here. Okay, notice also the p between m and th of warmth. The last sound of here of warm is m. We are going to add this suffix th to it. This th is voiceless. Here there is a tendency among native speakers of English to insert this p here, warmth here. Now p here is not part of the underlying representation of the words. It is something which is added, to the surface representation. Now let's talk about types of affixes, including prefixes, suffixes, infixes, and other things later on. Now let's try to consider infix. This is the example from Arabic. Ktib is the three literal root. Look, kutub, kitab, katiba. So here we are inserting things inside the root, inside the morpheme, ktib, inside the root, the word ktib, to obtain other meanings. Kutub, the plural of book, kitab, book, katiba. Okay, so he wrote. So in fact here we have got different words, different morphemes being obtained by inserting some elements, some what we call infixes here. Now the morpheme ktib, the three literal root, becomes, if you like, separated. So it is called a discontinuous morpheme here. It becomes discontinuous because it's let's say letters are being separated by infix here. K-t-b. It becomes a discontinuous morpheme. Now a root morpheme, okay, in this case it's a root morpheme. It's possible to split it and insert an element inside it here. This is what we have done here. Now another type of affix is what we call circumfix. Circumfix, here we have got a morpheme which is split into at least two bits, but the two bits go together. For example, t and u here, kat ktbu. This t and u go together. Kan ktbu. For example, we cannot say kan ktib. If you want to say kan, you have to say bu u, kan ktbu. So this is a morpheme which is split into two bits here, and the two bits go together, and they have the same meaning here. Okay. Now this kind of circumfix is found in German. In German, if you want to obtain the past participle form of verbs, you have to add ge at the beginning of the verb and t at the end. Okay, so let me just read. In German, the past participle form of verbs is obtained by placing ge at the beginning of the verb and t at the end. Reisen, travel, or voyager in French here. In both English and French, we add id and this a, voyager, traveled, respectively to the verb as suffix a. Now in German, the elements go together, ge and t. Look, gereist here. So this is the past participle form of the verb reisen, gereist. However, this is not the case of an, kein, nes. We cannot say that an and nes go together. They don't form the same morpheme. But an is a separate morpheme from nes here. There are two distinct morphemes here. It's not the kind of what we call circumfix in here, the type of circumfix that we talked about. Okay? Now, let's talk about another kind of affix. It's called superfix here. Superfix. The superfix is a morpheme which is represented by a particular intonation, certain patterns of intonation. So, we are here mainly referring to suprasegmentals. Suprasegmentals like stress, like for example, tones, pitch, and we have got others. So this is found in tone languages such as Chinese, Thai, and Shilluk, where, for example, the same sequence of sounds can be uttered with different pitches to denote different meanings. Let's have a look at the example. We have got the same vowels and same consonants here, tick. But we can change the meaning of this same sequence of sounds by changing just the pitch, which becomes, that we call tone. So if we pronounce tick with rising pitch, tick, it becomes singular. But if we pronounce it as level, with level pitch, tick, it becomes chins, plural. So this is something general in this language here. Look, another kind of word here, tongue, which means one pair, if it is pronounced with rising pitch. Same thing in here. But it becomes two pairs or more if it is pronounced with level pitch here. So pitch in this case is contrasted. Stress in English follows the same pattern here. Look, the word here, this word. If it is a verb, we have to pronounce it as to import. In this way, we stress the second syllable. But as a noun, we say an import. So we are stressing the first syllable here. So, the grammatical category of this word, whether it is a verb or a noun, it varies according to where we put the stress. If you put it on the first syllable, this is a noun. If you put it on the second, it is a verb. Same thing here. If you say an insult, look, I am stressing the first syllable here. It is a noun. But if I say to insult, it's a verb here. So I'm stressing the second syllable here. So once again, stress in English is phonemic. It is contrastive. It makes the difference in meaning between words here. Now let's talk about types of morphemes. We can talk first of all about replacive morphemes here. Let's talk about these examples. Read as opposed to read. This is the present. Okay, this is the past here. Come, came. Fall, fell. How can we analyze these cases here? The difference between read, read, come, came, fall, fell. There is one view here saying that this a here in red, it can be seen as an infix. It's what indicates the past. This is the change here. We change e, we replace e by a. So a is the indicator of the past here. It's a kind of infix. But this does not coincide with people's intuition. This is what was believed, in the past. But it does not, coincide with people's intuition, how people consider the word here. Therefore, we can say, this is the second view, that the present form of the morpheme read becomes another morpheme which replaces it, read. So here, rather than saying it's a, which is the infix, the indicator of the past, we can consider the whole read, the whole of the word, the whole of the morpheme, as replacing this morpheme read here. This one is the past, this one is the present here. So we have got two different views, two different ways of analyzing the same thing in here. Now another type of morpheme is the portmanteau morpheme. So in this case is found when we have one sound which represents not only one morpheme but more than one. In French we have got the case of this O here. Au garçon. Au garçon. Here in this O, au garçon, we have got different morphemes, if you like, here. We have got a, le, and the plural here. Okay? So instead of saying a, le, and es garçon, we say au garçon. This O is one more, one sound, including different morphemes in it. That's why we call it portmanteau. It bears many, it carries many morphemes, on its shoulder here. Now here there is no way to divide the word into parts and say which part corresponds to which morpheme here. There is no way to divide this O and say this, here we have got a, here we have got le, here we have got s here. But all of them are, if you like, mixed in one unit, one sound here. Now, same thing here. ila, this a here. Third person singular present. Look, here we have got different things being, mixed in one sound here. This is another, what we call portmanteau morpheme. The English are. This is the verb to be, okay? We, conjugated with we in the present here. So we are. In this are, we have got the verb to be. We have got the tense present, and we have got the plural here. Now we can talk about another type of morpheme here that we call the suppletive morpheme. Suppletive morpheme. Now here we have got a word, and we would like to obtain, for example, it's let's say plural. So cow, instead of saying, cow belongs to the group that we call cattle. So cattle is a general word including cow. Okay, so here this is the plural of cow here. Of course you can say cows, but cattle is a possible word including cow here. So we cannot predict the plural form by a rule because it's irregular. Look, in Moroccan Arabic we say المرأة. Of course as far as what we call child talk is concerned, we can say المراوات. This is when small children would like to produce the plural form of المرأة. But of course, let's say adult people, speakers, say عيالات, العيالات here. Faras, this is Arabic. Faras, خيل. Allez, je vais. Okay, nous irons, even in the future here. So what are we doing here? There is a complete change of the original root of the original word here. Aller becomes vais. It becomes nous irons, irons. Faras becomes khayl. Mara becomes ayalat here. And this is of course cow. We can say cows, but in fact it's possible to include cows in the category of cattle here. So cattle can become can be considered as the plural of cow here. Now all these morphemes, cattle, عيالات, خيل, they are called suppletive morphemes. Suppletive morphemes, they supplement k, they replace categorically, completely the original word. The original word is changed completely into another form here. This other form is what we call the suppletive morpheme here. They, khayl, عيالات, and cattle. Let's talk about a special form of morphs and allomorphs. This is what we call zero allomorph. In the word sheep, deer, fish, here, if we want to obtain the plural of these words, we don't add s. This is, adding s is the normal way of getting the plural of English nouns. But some nouns do not take this s. They remain the same, and of course we use them in the plural. This is the case of sheep, deer, fish. So here in all these words we have got the morpheme sheep plus the morpheme plural. Same deer, same thing for fish. Okay, for example, you can say the sheep is, or the sheep are. In the case when we say the sheep are, here the word sheep contains two morphemes. The morpheme sheep and the morpheme the plural here. Now what about the case of children? In children it seems we have got child plus this r plus en. Why do we separate en here? Because this en can be found in other words like ox, oxen. Okay, and we have got some other words here. Now which means that the r which is left in here is called an empty morph. It's something that exists, it is pronounced, but it stands for no meaning. It has got no if like no significance here, so it is called an empty morph. Same thing in here. In French, when you want to form the question here, il a dit, we say a-t-il dit. Now what meaning do we give to this t here? It does not, I mean, have any significance, any meaning, apart from what we call the liaison here. Okay, it is I mean, just for the purpose of linking. So it's another type, another case or another example of empty morph. Now this O here in thermometer, we have what therm and meter. This O here is something which is just added for just the linking purposes here. The O doesn't give any meaning, it seems to be there just to link here. So this is another kind of special type that we call zero allomorph. Some people call them empty morphs here. Okay. Now we have got to stop here. Next time we are going to record, I mean, if you like, the third part of morphology, and we are going to begin by compounding. This is to be done later on.